Yeah, I want to try a little experiment to kick things off today.
Uh?
No, it's a mental exercise, but it requires you to be present in your physical space. So wherever you are right now, unless you're driving, obviously,
Hmm.
please keep your eyes on the road. But if you can, I want you to just stop for a second
Okay.
and just look at the physical environment around you. If you're on a train or a bus, look at the buildings blurring by the window.
Mm.
If you're sitting in a coffee shop, look at the actual walls, the floor tiles, the lighting fixtures. If you're at your desk, just look up at the ceiling grid.
It's a grounding exercise, isn't it?
Yeah.
We spend something like 90% of our lives indoors navigating these
I guess boxes.
these
Yeah.
boxes.
We sleep in them, we work in them, we eat in them, we store our junk in them.
They're the stage sets for our entire lives.
They are. And here's the thing. We, as a society, are absolutely obsessed with residential real estate. I mean, it's the ultimate dinner party topic, right?
Ooh, for sure. Did you see what that house down the street sold for? Check out this estimate.
Yes. We treat buying a home like it's the main character of the economy, but the backdrop of our entire economic life, the places where value is actually created, where goods are manufactured, where commerce actually happens, that's all commercial real estate.
Or CRE, as the insiders call it.
CRE. And yet, for the vast majority of people, CRE is completely invisible. It's
It's the scenery. It's just the background noise to the movie of their life.
that's a perfect way to put it. But when you actually, peel back the curtain, you realize that commercial real estate isn't just concrete and steel. It's a massive, massive chunk of global wealth.
A truly staggering amount. We're talking about an asset class that, in the U.S. alone, was valued at approximately $6 trillion.
$6 trillion.
And that was back in 2018, so the number is almost certainly higher now.
$6 trillion. That number is so large it just becomes abstract. It's hard to even visualize what $6 trillion even looks like.
It is, but think of it this way. That $6 trillion explains how your city is built. It explains why your favorite taco shop suddenly closed down last month. It explains why a new skyscraper is going up downtown, even though everyone says they're working from home. It, frankly, explains the solvency of your local bank. It is the invisible engine that keeps the whole machine running.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to stop looking at buildings as just scenery and start looking at them as machines.
Profit-generating machines.
We're going to decode the jargon. We'll talk LOIs, PSAs, cap rates, and we're going to break down the mechanics of the industry. Because there is a fundamental difference between the house I live in and the office building I work in, isn't there?
That is the fundamental distinction. It's right there in the definition. Commercial property, or, investment property, is real estate land or buildings intended to generate a profit.
See, that's the shift. My house, the profit, is mostly just me emotionally hoping it sells for more in 10 years. It's sort of a savings account you can live in.
Right. It's shelter. But commercial real estate is an active business.
A money machine.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It is a money machine. And that profit comes from two very specific buckets. You have capital gains, that's selling the asset for more than you bought it for, and then you have rental income. And while capital gains are nice, that rental income piece is the real engine.
That's the core of it.
It is. It's about yield. It's about cash flow. It's about the monthly check coming in.
Okay, so if the definition is property intended to generate profit, well, that casts a pretty wide net. When I think commercial, my brain immediately defaults to, like, the opening credits of a movie Manhattan skyline, big glass towers.
Sure, the iconic stuff.
But the source material we're looking at breaks this down into 6 distinct buckets. And I have to say, the diversity here really surprised me.
It's much more diverse than just office towers. And if you really want to understand the landscape, you have to look at these 6 buckets individually because the economics of each one are totally different. An office tower does not behave like a warehouse.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the classic. Bucket number 1, office buildings.
Right. So, yes, this includes the downtown skyscrapers, what we call Class A office space, high-rises, marble lobbies, security guards, high-speed elevators, the whole 9 yards.
The fancy stuff.
The fancy stuff. But it also includes the stuff you drive past without a second thought. The suburban office parks. The single-tenant properties where maybe just a local insurance agent and a dentist operate out of a converted brick building.
So that little building on Main Street with the accountant upstairs and the chiropractor downstairs.
Yeah.
That is CRE.
Absolutely. 100%. Is it generating rental income from a business tenant?
Yes.
Then it's commercial real estate. That's the definition. It doesn't have to be 50 stories tall to be a commercial office asset.
Hmm.
In fact, in terms of sheer quantity, those smaller buildings make up a huge portion of the market.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, it includes everything from the Empire State Building down to a small structure housing a nonprofit.
Okay, that's a great distinction. Moving on to bucket number 2, retail. This one felt huge when I was reading through the notes because retail feels like a dying word sometimes. But the real estate itself seems to be just evolving.
Evolving is the perfect word. Retail is fascinating because of the sheer variety of shapes and sizes. It is not just shops. You have, for example, what are called pad sites.
Rehab sites. It sounds like something from a sci-fi movie. A launch landing zone.
Huh, I like that. In a way, it is a landing zone for commerce.
Yeah.
A pad site is usually a standalone building, often right on a highway frontage. Think of a fast food restaurant, Starbucks, or a bank branch that sits just apart from the main shopping center, right by the road.
Right, the high visibility spot. You don't have to drive deep into the parking lot maze to get to it.
Exactly. And they pay a premium for that visibility. Then you have inline multi-tenant retail. That's your classic strip mall. The dry cleaner, the nail salon, the vape shop, all in a line. But then the sources distinguish between two really interesting types of larger centers: power centers and lifestyle centers.
Okay, I love the branding here. Power center sounds so intense, like where Wall Street traders go to buy their groceries.
It's actually about drawing power. A power center is dominated by what we call category killers or big box anchors. We're talking Best Buy, PetSmart, OfficeMax, Home Depot.
The giants.
The giants.
Yeah.
The architecture is usually strictly functional, big tilt wall concrete, massive parking lots, all aimed at efficiency. You go there to get stuff. It's transactional.
Versus the lifestyle center, which sounds like it comes with a spa treatment and a glass of champagne.
Well, some of them basically do. The lifestyle center is trying to be an experience. It's the physical world's antidote to online shopping.
How so?
It often blends indoor and outdoor shopping. It might have fountains, nice walking paths, upscale restaurants mixed in with the stores, maybe a cinema or an Apple store. The whole goal is to keep you there hanging out, not just buying a printer cartridge and leaving.
It's the difference between running an errand and having an afternoon out.
Precisely. And that distinction matters immensely to investors because the type of tenant and the type of lease you get is very different. A power center tenant like Home Depot signs a very long, stable lease because they have massive inventory.
Right, they're not going anywhere.
But a lifestyle center tenant might be a trendy boutique that's maybe a bit riskier, but they're willing to pay much higher rent per square foot for that premium environment.
That makes sense. Okay, bucket number 3. This was my big aha moment in the research.
Yeah.
Multifamily residential.
This is where people often get tripped up. It's a common point of confusion.
Right, because people live there. It says residential right in the name. Why is it in the commercial bucket? If I rent an apartment, I am not running a business out of it.
You weren't, but the owner of the building is. It all comes down to scale and intent. Generally speaking, in the U.S., the dividing line is the number 4.
4 units.
Exactly. Anything larger than a fourplex, that is, a building with 4 units, is almost always considered commercial real estate for lending and tax purposes.
So let's play this out. If I buy a duplex and I live in one half and rent out the other half, that's still residential.
Typically, yes. You would go to a bank and get a residential mortgage, like a standard 30-year fixed rate, just like buying a single-family house. The bank looks at your personal income to see if you can pay the loan.
But if I buy an apartment complex with 5 units or a high-rise with 500 units?
Now you've crossed the line. You've gone from being a homeowner to an operator of a business.
Because at that point, the bank looks at me differently.
Completely differently. When you go to buy a 100-unit apartment building, the bank is underwriting the building's income. They want to see the rent roll. They want to see the operating statements.
So they're loaning money to the business, not to me personally.
In essence, yes. The building is a business that happens to sell shelter as its product. The valuation is based on the cash flow it generates, not just comparable home sales in the neighborhood.
That makes total sense. It's a business valuation, not a property valuation.
Right.
Okay, that clicks. Bucket number 4, industrial.
This is the invisible backbone of the entire modern economy. For a long, long time, industrial was the unsexy stepchild of real estate. Dusty warehouses.
Right. big metal sheds.
Big metal sheds.
Yeah.
But with the rise of e-commerce, this sector has just exploded. It's become one of the hottest asset classes.
It's where Amazon lives.
It is exactly where Amazon lives. Warehouses, distribution centers, last mile logistics hubs, all that stuff you order online touches multiple industrial properties before it gets to your door.
And there are niches here too, right? The sources mention cold storage or cold chain properties.
Yes, and this is a fascinating subsector.
This is for food,
Yeah.
right? And medicine.
Exactly. Food, pharmaceuticals, anything that needs precise temperature control. These are highly specialized, very expensive facilities. You can't just store vaccines or frozen seafood in a standard metal shed.
What's so different about them?
Well, you need redundant tower systems, massive insulation, specialized flooring that can handle extreme temperatures, and heavy equipment. The infrastructure required for cold chain makes these properties very valuable and also very specific. You can't easily convert a cold storage facility into, say, a furniture warehouse.
Then R&D facilities fall under this industrial umbrella too.
They do. Research and development. These are often hybrid spaces, part office, part lab, part light manufacturing. Think of a biotech company. They need a nice lobby for investors to walk through,
Sure.
but they need a highly specialized wet lab in the back to actually develop the drug. They get lumped into industrial, but they're often much nicer and much more expensive to build and operate than your average warehouse.
Okay, bucket number 5. Land.
The raw material, the very beginning of the whole process.
And this can be a couple different things.
Right. It can be undeveloped, raw, rural land that's just sitting in the path of future development. That's a very speculative play.
That feels like the highest risk. You're just holding dirt and paying taxes on it, hoping the city grows towards you.
It is high risk, but it can be incredibly high reward if you guess right. Or, on the other end of the spectrum, it can be infill land.
Infill meaning
Yeah.
a vacant lot in the middle of a developed city.
Exactly. A gap in the urban fabric. Maybe an old derelict parking lot or a tear-down building in a dense, desirable area. That land is incredibly valuable because all the infrastructure, the roads, the water, the power is already there. You don't have to build a highway to get to it.
You're just plugging into the existing grid.
You're plugging in. It's much less risky in some ways, but the entry cost is obviously much, much higher.
Here, finally, bucket number 6. The catch-all, miscellaneous.
This is where everything else lives. The oddballs.
Hospitality is in here.
Uh-huh.
So, hotels and motels, medical centers, and a huge one recently, self-storage.
Oh, self-storage is everywhere these days. It feels like every time I turn around, a new one is popping up on the edge of town.
It's a massive industry.
And financially, it's brilliant. Think
Right.
about it. It's basically just concrete walls, roll-up metal doors, very few utilities, and very few staff members.
Low overhead.
Incredibly low overhead. And to be a little cold about it, the eviction laws for storage units are much, much easier and faster for the owner than for apartments. It's a very specific subsector that operates very differently from, say, an office building.
So we have these 6 buckets, but I noticed the sources also talk about how these things can blend together, the concept of mixed use.
Yes, and this is a huge trend, especially in urban locations. It's a move away from the rigid separation of uses.
Right.
You'll see a building where the first floor is retail, maybe a coffee shop and a clothing store, and levels 2 through 10 are office space, or maybe residential apartments on top of all that.
It's creating a mini ecosystem in one building. But I assume I can't just decide to turn my house into a coffee shop, office, tower, warehouse just because I want to.
Definitely not. That is where zoning comes in. Real estate is one of the most heavily regulated industries there is.
So the local government has the final say.
Local authorities have very strict maps. A business must be located in an area zoned for commerce. You can't just build a factory in a quiet suburb. The government designates the usage to keep the city functioning logically, keeping the noisy, smelly stuff away from the sleeping stuff.
Okay, so that's the landscape. We know where the buildings are. We had defined the playing field. Now I want to get into the machinery.
The money.
The money. Because you said earlier, this is all about generating profit.
Right. That is the entire goal.
The outline calls this the money machine. And it seems like there's a fundamental equation here.
There is. If you want to understand commercial investment at its core, you have to look at 4 variables: cash inflows, cash outflows, timing, and risk. If you can master those 4, you understand the entire industry.
Okay, let's take those one by one. Cash inflows. This seems obvious. It's the rent. The tenant sends a check every month.
Rent is the big one, yes. It is the headline number. But if you only look at rent, you are missing some of the hidden streams that savvy investors really look for.
Hidden streams. What else is there?
Well, first, Think about operating expense recoveries.
Okay, that sounds like pure jargon. Translate that for me.
Okay, this is a crucial concept, and it's a huge difference from residential. In a residential lease, if the water heater breaks or the property taxes go up, the landlord pays for it, right?
Right. It eats into their profit.
Exactly. But in commercial, we often have what are called net leases, or most commonly, triple net leases. NNN.
Triple net. I've heard that term. What does it mean?
It means the tenant pays the base rent, plus they pay a proportional share of the building's key costs, the property taxes, the building insurance, and the maintenance of the common areas.
Wait, hold on. So if I'm renting space for my bagel shop in a strip mall, I am paying the landlord's property taxes.
In a triple net lease, yes, you are. When the landlord gets the tax bill, they pay it, and then they bill you back for your share. That is an operating expense recovery. It's cash flowing back to the landlord.
That is a massive shift in risk. The landlord isn't eating the cost of keeping the lights on in the hallway or plowing the snow in the parking lot.
Exactly. It protects the landlord's profit margin from inflation or unexpected tax hikes. It makes the income stream much more predictable.
Wow. Okay, what else?
Then you have other fees, parking fees, vending machines. If you own a massive office complex, the parking income alone can be 6 or even 7 figures a year. It's not insignificant.
And the sources mention tax benefits too. This always feels like where the rich person's game is played.
It is a huge part of the game. The biggest one is depreciation.
Explain that.
In the eyes of the IRS, a building is physically wearing out over time, so they let you deduct that wear and tear from your taxable income as a paper loss, even if the building is actually going up in market value.
So you're getting a tax break on a loss that isn't real.
Essentially, yes, it's called a phantom loss. This lowers your taxable income from the property, effectively keeping more cash in your pocket. And then there are tax credits. For example, if you renovate a designated historical building, the government might give you a dollar-for-dollar credit that acts just like cash inflow.
So the money comes in from rent, from fees, from the tenants paying you back for expenses, and from tax breaks. Now, the sane part. Cash outflows.
The money going out?
The pain.
Right. Obviously, you have the initial investment, the down payment. That's a huge chunk of cash. Then you have the operating expenses and taxes we just mentioned, which you have to pay before you get reimbursed. And the big one, debt service.
The mortgage payment.
Correct. But there's another specific cost in commercial real estate that you don't really see in residential, and it can be an absolute killer if you don't plan for it. Tenant leasing costs.
Is that like paying a realtor to find a tenant?
It includes commissions to brokers, yes, and those can be substantial, often 4 to 6% of the total lease value over the entire term.
The whole term, so on a 10-year lease.
The commission is huge,
Yeah.
but it also includes Timmy's tenant improvements. Okay, let's say you own an empty floor in an office building. It's just a concrete box. And a prestigious law firm wants to move in. That law firm says, we love the space, but we need 3 more conference rooms, a glass wall entry, a bigger kitchen, and premium carpet.
So they want you to build it out for them.
Exactly. You, the landlord, might have to pay for all of that construction to get them to sign the lease. That's the TI allowance.
So you have to spend a ton of money just to get the tenant who will eventually pay you the money.
Exactly. It is a massive cash outflow that happens right at the start of a lease. You might be out of pocket $100,000, $500,000, even millions of dollars before you collect a single dollar of rent from that tenant.
That's a huge upfront cost.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the third element you mentioned, timing.
Real estate is fundamentally a game of cash flow timing. You have to project when these flows happen. You might have a year of massive negative cash flow while you're doing those renovations, followed by 5 or 10 years of positive cash flow from the rent. If you don't have the cash reserves to survive that first year of outflow, you go bust before you ever get to the good part.
And that leads directly to the fourth element, risk.
Risk in CRE is largely a game of prediction. It's all about probability. What is the probability that this tenant will renew their lease in 5 years?
Or what's the probability they'll go out of business next year?
Exactly. What's the probability that the market rent for this type of space will go up or down? It feels like weather forecasting sometimes.
You're trying to predict the future.
You are. You're analyzing market conditions to predict the reliability of those cash flows.
Yeah.
If you have a government agency as a tenant, like the FBI or the Social Security Administration, the risk of them not paying is basically zero.
Right, they can print the money.
So the yield you get might be lower, but it's incredibly safe. On the other hand, if your only tenant is a trendy tech startup that has never turned a profit, your risk is astronomically high. So you better be charging them a much higher rent to compensate for that risk.
It's all a balancing act.
Always.
So we have the building types, we have the math of the investment. Now I want to walk through how you actually buy one of these things.
Sure.
Because the sources describe a transaction process that sounds way more intense than buying a house. I bought a house last year, and I thought that was stressful. This sounds like a military operation.
It is much more formal, and there are many more off-ramps. It's designed to protect both sides because the stakes are just so high. We aren't talking about a $400,000 house. We're talking about a $20 million or $50 million or $500 million asset.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Who are the players involved here?
Well, you have the brokers, of course. They're the matchmakers connecting buyers and sellers. But the buyers themselves vary wildly. You might have an owner user.
An owner user.
That's a business buying a building to operate out of. Like a bakery buying its own building so they don't have to pay rent to a landlord anymore. Then you have private investors, maybe a wealthy individual or a family office buying property for their portfolio. And then you have the big guns, private equity firms and institutional investors.
Like pension funds and insurance companies.
Exactly. The really big money.
Okay, so I'm a private equity firm. I see a building I like. Do I just write an offer on a napkin and slide it across the table?
Not usually. Step one is almost always the LOI, the letter of intent.
The sources call this a signal of intent.
Think of the LOI as the proposal before the marriage, or maybe going steady. It outlines the major terms, price, closing date, big conditions, but it is usually not fully legally binding yet. It's a gentleman's agreement on the main points.
Why do this extra step? Why not just go straight to the big, scary contract?
Because lawyers are expensive. You don't want to spend $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 having attorneys draft a 100-page purchase and sale agreement if you and the seller are still $5 million apart on the price.
So it's a cost-saving measure.
It saves unnecessary costs. It makes sure you're both on the same page and serious about the big picture items before you get the legal clock ticking.
That makes sense. It's a let's see if we're serious phase.
Yeah.
Okay, so we agree on the LOI, everyone signs. Then comes step 2, the PSA.
The purchase and sale agreement. Now we are in the serious legal territory. This is the binding contract.
This is for real.
This is for real. And unlike buying a house, where you might use a standard fill-in-the-blank form from the State Realtor Association, a commercial PSA is almost always custom. It is highly negotiated. Every clause, every timeline, every representation and warranty is up for grabs.
Once that is signed, we enter what I'm calling the danger zone.
Yeah.
Step 3, escrow and due diligence.
This is where the real work happens. The buyer puts down an escrow deposit. Usually this is refundable at first.
At first, that sounds ominous.
It is the investigation phase. The buyer has a set period of time, maybe 30, 60, 90 days, to tear the property apart. Figuratively and sometimes literally. They are reviewing all the financial statements.
Like what?
They're asking, are the tenants actually paying the rent they're supposed to be paying, or are they all 3 months behind? They are looking at the rent roll. They are getting estoppels.
Estoppels. What is that?
An estoppel is a legal document where the tenant themselves confirms the key terms of their lease. You want to hear it directly from the tenant, not just take the landlord's word for it.
Oh, wow.
If the landlord says the rent is $5,000, but the tenant sends back the estoppel saying, no, I have a side deal for $3,000 and the landlord owes me for a new air conditioner, you have a problem.
So you're basically fact-checking the seller.
Ruthlessly. You are also checking all the vendor contracts. Is the landscaping contract overpriced? You're checking the zoning to make sure it's legal. And of course, you're checking the physical condition of the building itself.
The roofs, the HVAC.
All of it. And crucially, environmental reports. This is huge.
Why is that so important?
Is there an old leaky oil tank buried under the parking lot from a gas station that was there in 1950? If that tank is leaking contaminants into the groundwater, you, the new owner, could be on the hook for millions of dollars in environmental cleanup. That is an absolute deal killer.
And this is where contingencies come in.
Yes. A contingency is a clause that says, I, the buyer, will buy this building unless I can't get a mortgage, unless the roof is falling in, unless the environmental report comes back glowing green. These clauses are the buyer's escape hatches. They let you back out and get your deposit back if you find something scary.
But then there's a turning point, a point of no return. The sources mentioned the deposit becoming non-refundable.
This is the most crucial moment in every single deal. It is often called going hard.
Going hard, it sounds intense.
It is the hard deposit. There is a specific date in the contract. If you, the buyer, have not terminated the deal by 5 p.m. on that date, your deposit money, which could be hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, becomes non-refundable. It goes hard.
So if I wake up the next morning and get cold feet for any reason at all, the seller just keeps my money.
The seller keeps your money. Exactly. They keep it as a fee for your failure to close. They took the property off the market for you. They lost time. They opened up their books to you. So as a buyer, you have to be absolutely 100% sure before you let that date pass. You need to know where all the bodies are buried.
That is incredibly high pressure.
It is. But if you pass that date and everything is okay, you move to step 4, closing. This is where the funds are exchanged through escrow and the title is transferred. And then step 5, post-closing. It's not over yet.
What's left to do?
You have to formally notify all the tenants to start sending their rent checks to the new address. You have to transfer all the vendor relationships. You have to secure the keys, change the locks. You officially take over the asset.
It really is a massive operation. It makes buying a house look like buying a candy bar. The level of diligence is just on a completely different planet because the liabilities are so much higher.
And the mistakes are infinitely more expensive.
So we know how the machine works. We know how to buy the machine. But I want to talk about how the machine is running right now. Because we have some data here. Some of it is historical, but some of it is very recent, from April 2025. And the picture it paints is, well, it's complex.
And this is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a little scary, because commercial real estate is a slow-moving ship, but when it turns, it creates massive waves throughout the entire economy.
Let's start with the scale again, just to ground us. In the U.S., the total value was around $6 trillion back in 2018. But the sources highlight some pretty significant distress signals.
They do. According to Real Capital Analytics, which is a big data firm in this space, MSCI owns them now, there is over $160 billion in properties currently in some state of distress.
What does distress mean in this context?
It means they're in default on their loan, they're in foreclosure, or the owner's in bankruptcy.
160 billion. That is not just a few bad deals here and there. That sounds like a structural issue.
It is, and there's a specific paradox happening in the office sector that really explains some of this. The data shows that in 2024, office leasing volume actually rose to its highest level since 2020.
Sounds good on the surface. That sounds great. People are going back to the office. The return to work mandates are working.
Ideally, yes. The headlines look good. But here's the catch, and this is a critical nuance that really, really matters. The sources point out that roughly 60% of the active office leases currently in place date back to pre-pandemic times.
Wait, walk me through why that's a problem.
Think about a standard office lease. It's not 1 year. It's often 7 to 10 years long.
Okay.
If a big company signed a 10-year lease in 2018 or 2019, they are still paying rent on that lease today in 2025 or 2026. They are contractually obligated to pay for space based on 2019 headcounts and 2019 work habits.
Even if the office is half empty because everyone is hybrid now.
Even if they are only using 20% of the space, they are legally on the hook to pay that rent. So the landlord's revenue looks stable on paper. The checks are still coming in.
But when those leases expire...
Exactly. That is the cliff. That is the storm on the horizon. When those leases come up for renewal over the next few years, those companies are not going to renew for 50,000 square feet. They might downsize to 20,000 or go fully remote and not renew at all.
So the current revenue that these buildings are showing is a mirage.
It's a mirage in many cases. It's built on old agreements that do not reflect the current reality of work.
And that's a ticking clock. Because if the revenue drops, the building's value drops. And if the value drops below the loan amount...
The loan goes underwater. Now let's look across the ocean. Let's go to Europe, because this is a global phenomenon.
And Europe is facing its own set of challenges. First off, the economic engine there is huge. We're talking about CRE contributing about 285 billion euros to the economy and securing about 4 million jobs based on 2012 figures. So it's a huge employer.
A massive part of their economy.
But the sources mention a debt wall.
A debt wall. That sounds even worse than a ticking clock.
It is a very serious situation. The sources state that half of the 960 billion euros of debt that is backed by commercial real estate needs to be refinanced in the next 3 years.
Half of it. So we're talking about, what, roughly 480 billion euros?
Correct. 480 billion euros in loans are coming due. Now think about interest rates. A lot of these loans were taken out 5, 7, maybe 10 years ago. What were interest rates doing back then?
They were near zero, historically low. Money was basically free.
Exactly. Now, these property owners have to go back to the bank and refinance in a completely different interest rate environment. If your interest rate goes from, say, 2% to 6%, your debt service payment can double or even triple.
The cash outflows for debt service just explode.
And suddenly the profit is gone. The money machine we talked about earlier breaks down. The building might not generate enough rent to cover the new, much more expensive mortgage.
And the source explicitly mentions that any future interest rate hikes could complicate refinancing even further and put even more pressure on valuations. It's a squeeze from both sides.
It is a massive squeeze. And if the owners can't refinance, they default. And the banks are the ones left holding the bag.
Which brings it right up to the present day, April 2025. We have a specific snapshot from the Board of Governors Sentiment Index. This is a survey that measures how the leaders in the industry are feeling about the future. And it's not great.
It's a pretty significant drop. The data says confidence fell from 126.5% in late 2024 all the way down to 87.9% in April 2025.
That is a massive slide in just a few months. That's a huge swing in sentiment.
It is cited directly in the report as the sharpest drop since the COVID-19 pandemic.
And does the data point to a reason why the sudden gloom and doom?
It does. The report we're looking at attributes it directly to the Trump administration's latest tariff policies.
Okay, so let's look at this neutrally, just as a reported cause and effect. Why would tariff policies scare the commercial real estate market so badly?
Well, markets absolutely hate uncertainty, and they hate rising costs. Tariffs, generally speaking, mean that key construction materials get more expensive. Steel, aluminum, lumber, drywall.
So the cost to build a new building goes up.
The cost to build goes up, which means projects get delayed or canceled. And it's not just new construction. If global trade slows down because of tariffs,
Then demand for warehouses and industrial space drops.
right.
Demand for space near ports drops.
Exactly. And if tariffs impact the tenants themselves, the retailers, the manufacturers, and their businesses suffer, well, that hits the landlords directly. They can't pay their rent. It is all connected. You can't separate real estate from the broader economy.
It really shows how sensitive this entire ecosystem is. We think of buildings as solid, stable, immovable objects, but the value of those buildings is incredibly fluid. It's tied to interest rate policy, it's tied to work-from-home trends, it's tied to global trade.
And that really is the synthesis here. If we connect this all back to the bigger picture, commercial real estate isn't just about the bricks and the mortar. It is a living ecosystem of debt, risk, zoning, and maybe most importantly, human sentiment.
It's the ground beneath our feet, literally and economically.
It is. So let's bring this home for the listener. What does this all mean for you? Why should you care about debt walls in Europe or sentiment drops in the U.S. if you aren't out there buying a skyscraper?
Because it affects everything. It affects the stability of the very bank that holds your savings, because that bank is almost certainly holding billions in CRE loans on its balance sheet.
Right.
It affects the vibrancy of your city center. If those office buildings go empty because of that lease cliff we talked about, what happens? The coffee shop on the ground floor closes. The dry cleaner that served the office workers closes. The city's tax revenue plummets.
And when city tax revenue drops, public services get cut. Potholes don't get fixed. Schools lose funding. Police and fire departments face budget cuts.
Exactly. It is the invisible thread connecting every part of the economy. You can ignore it, but you are living inside of it every single day.
So I want to leave everyone with a final thought, a little bit of a provocation to chew on.
Go for it.
Right now, wherever you are, unless you happen to be in your own home, you are likely standing or sitting inside a piece of commercial real estate. So just look at the floor, look at the walls, and ask yourself, who owns this building? Is the lease that this business signed pre-pandemic? And considering the massive debt walls we talked about and that sharp drop in sentiment, just how stable is the ground beneath the economy's feet right now?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it?
Thanks for diving deep with us. We will see you on the next one.
Take care.